In the summer of 46 BCE, Julius Caesar returned to Rome. He was more than a victorious general. He was the master of the Roman world. All his enemies were either dead or had bent the knee. This was the moment that changed everything. Roman politics had been decaying for years, but now it was about to break completely. Before Caesar even set foot in the city, the Senate panicked. In a desperate move, they offered him power that no Roman had ever held before. His dictatorship, a temporary 6-month position, was extended for 10 full years. This was unheard of. The senators were terrified of what he might take, so they tried to control him by giving him everything. They figured that by keeping it legal, they could put a leash on him. They were gambling that in 10 years, he'd be weaker, and they could finally get rid of him. They also gave him 5 straight years as consul and the personal power to declare war and issue pardons whenever he wanted. They were making a deal with a tiger, hoping it wouldn't bite. When Caesar finally arrived, he announced he had earned not 1, but 4 victory parades. 4 triumphs, 1 for Gaul, 1 for Egypt, 1 for Asia Minor, and 1 for North Africa. The Senate had no choice but to agree. But while the triumph for Gaul was completely legitimate, the other 3 were a stretch. His conquest of Egypt ended with him giving a province away to Cleopatra. The campaign in Asia Minor just restored the status quo, and the war in North Africa was fought against other Romans. He just pretended it was about a foreign king. But Caesar got his parades, and they were a spectacle for the ages. The Gallic triumph was the greatest. It featured paintings of his victories, wagons overflowing with treasure, and as the main event, the captive Gallic king, Vercingetorix, who had been kept alive in a dungeon for 6 years just for this moment of humiliation. As Caesar rode in his chariot, a wheel snapped. He was thrown to the ground. To the superstitious Romans, it was a terrible ominous sign that the goddess of luck had abandoned him. Shaken, Caesar later climbed the steps to the temple of Jupiter on his knees, begging for forgiveness. After the display, Vercingetorix, his part played, was taken away, and following Caesar's chariot were his soldiers, drunk and rowdy, singing crude songs. One of them went something like this: "Romans, watch your wives, here's the bald adulterous whore. We pissed away your gold in Gaul, and have come to borrow more." A few days later came the Egyptian triumph. The star prisoner here was Cleopatra's sister, Arsinoe, but the crowd loved her. They found her charming and beautiful, and they began to shout for her life to be spared. Caesar, sensing the mood, gave in and allowed her to live. It was a smart political move. The Asia Minor triumph was so insignificant that no ancient writer bothered to describe it. But the final triumph for North Africa was a disaster. Instead of celebrating a victory over foreigners, the parade featured giant, gruesome paintings of Caesar's Roman enemies killing themselves. One showed the general Scipio stabbing himself. Another depicted Cato, the younger, ripping out his own intestines. The crowd was disgusted. This wasn't a victory. It was a celebration of civil war. When the prisoners were brought out, the main captive was the young son of King Juba, a child under the age of 6. The crowd, already sour, became furious at the idea of executing a little boy. They began to riot, demanding Caesar spare the child. Caesar had no choice. The boy's life was spared. From these 4 triumphs, Caesar brought 2,000 tons of silver into Rome, worth over $1 billion today. And now, it was time to spend it. First, he paid his soldiers. Each legionary received a bonus equal to 15 years' wages. This wasn't from the state. This was a personal gift from Caesar. Then, he turned to the public. Every single Roman citizen received a surprise gift equal to about 4 months' wages. The aristocracy sneered at the blatant pandering, but they were powerless to stop it. But Caesar's work wasn't done. He still owed his veterans land. About 22,000 of them were due for retirement. To solve this, he created a program for the government to buy farmland at inflated prices from willing sellers, giving a bailout to failing farmers and land to his loyal soldiers. Next, he tackled the broken political system. The Senate had been devastated by the Civil War. There weren't enough qualified men to run the provinces. Caesar's solution was radical. First, he used his dictatorial power to appoint hundreds of new senators. They were his loyal centurions, wealthy supporters from the Italian countryside, and even aristocrats from Gaul. The old guard in Rome was horrified. A joke spread through the city. The Gauls have crossed the sacred boundary. They're asking for directions to the Senate House. It was paranoia, but it showed how much Caesar was shattering tradition. In one move, he had quadrupled the size of the Senate and pacted with his loyalists. He also increased the number of elected officials to create more governors. And as a temporary fix, he appointed underqualified men to powerful posts, including Marcus Brutus, the son of his favorite mistress. With politics under his control, Caesar turned to Rome's systemic problems. He reformed the grain dole, the state program that gave free grain to the poor. The system was corrupt, with many wealthy families still on the list. Caesar cut the number of recipients from 320,000 down to 150,000, but he enforced strict new oversight to ensure the aid only went to the truly needy. It was a popular reform that restored fairness to the system, but his most ambitious project was utterly thankless: fixing the calendar. The Roman calendar was a mess. It was a lunar calendar that constantly fell out of sync with the seasons. It was the job of the Pontifex Maximus, who happened to be Caesar, to add extra days to fix it, but he'd been away at war for over a decade. By 46 BCE, the Roman calendar was off by 3 months. While in Egypt, Caesar had learned about their superior 365-day solar calendar. He hired an Egyptian astronomer, and together, they designed a new Roman calendar. It would have 365 days and, crucially, a system that couldn't be manipulated by politicians. They invented the leap year, an extra day automatically added every 4th year to keep the calendar perfectly aligned. To get the current year back on track, Caesar had to insert 90 extra days into the year 46 BCE, making it 445 days long, the longest year in human history. On January 1st, 45 BCE, the Julian calendar came into effect. It's the same system that, with minor tweaks, we still use to this day. Caesar was at the height of his power. He was reforming the state, paying his debts, and even fixing time itself. It seemed he had finally won. But then, a message arrived from Spain. His old right-hand man, Labienus, had joined forces with Pompey's sons. The Roman legions stationed in Spain had defected to their side. 2 provinces had fallen. Caesar was caught completely by surprise. The war wasn't over. The Civil War had just been given a second life.